Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sparks Talks webinar series, all part of the Latest Spark campaign, brought to you by the Girls Action Foundation. I am Elvira Trulia, webinar and blog producer for the Light of Spark campaign, and in a couple of minutes, I'm going to pass things over to Amanda Granger-Monday, who will be talking about some of the options and advantages to using cloud computing or web-based tools for your work in nonprofits or other settings. And I'm really, really happy that Amanda agreed to join us today and share her knowledge. And I'm also happy to see some familiar names joining us for today's webinar. And for those of you returning, welcome back to Spark Talks. And for those of you who are new to this webinar series, I want to just briefly introduce you to Girls Action Foundation before passing things on to Amanda. So very quickly, Girls Action Foundation is a national nonprofit organization that works to empower girls. And we're based in Montreal, where we run our own local girls programs. And we work with some 250 partners across the country who run their own girls programs. We also provide leadership training, organize networking events, and do other things to connect girls and young women. In terms of impact, we reach about 60,000 girls and young women across the country. This webinar series is presented as part of Light of Spark. It's a campaign that showcases women role models across Canada, and the goal is really to help inspire girls and young women. And these role models, or what we call Sparks, are involved in the campaign in different ways, including as webinar presenters. And so just before introducing Amanda Granger-Monday, who's in fact one of our Sparks in Light of Spark, I'd like to just give you a little bit of a rundown of what we'll be doing today. So you should see on the right-hand side of your screen a number of information displays. And, I'm just going to interrupt to let everyone know some people are saying that they can't, the music is still on, they can't turn it off. Yeah, but you solved the problem. So that's it. Some of you might see a video on your media viewer panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and please just, if the video hasn't completed, just take a moment to press the stop button or the pause button so you can hear us live. So relating to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll also see a box called Q&A, and this is where you can ask questions and interact with Amanda, myself, and other participants. So if you have a question or comment during the presentation, please type it into the Q&A box, hit enter, as Mehdi Dussault did, so thank you, Mehdi, and this will be recorded in the box. But by default, everyone who's participating will see your question, and if you prefer to submit it privately, take a second to hit the down arrow at the bottom of the Q&A box and select my name, Elvira Trulia, and the question will come only to me. So after Amanda speaks, we'll be opening up the question and answer period to answer your questions. And as the moderator, I'll be keeping track of everything that has been asked in the Q&A box and direct them to Amanda. So I also want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, including the question and answer period. And all of this will be posted online in the next few days, and I'll make sure to send everyone a link to the recording. So on a last tech note, you should be able to see Amanda on your screens, on the right-hand panel of your screen. If you can't, go to the top right-hand menu, and you'll see a little button. Click on that, the down button, and select Video Panel. After you do that, you have to click on Amanda's name in order to receive her video feed. So the last thing I have to do today before passing things on to Amanda is introduce her. So Amanda Granger-Monday has a keen interest in open technology and data sharing. She works for the Framework Foundation in Toronto, where she has been building awareness campaigns for the last 2 years. Amanda is responsible for Time Razor's national communications. This includes building dynamic social media and cloud computing strategies. Amanda is sought after as a public speaker and conference presenter. She's led sessions such as Facebook privacy awareness, social media strategies, and life in the cloud computing. She has an honors Bachelor of Arts from the University of Western Ontario in Information and Media Studies and is a graduate of United Way Toronto's City Leaders program. Amanda is also actively involved with Toronto's Emerging Leaders Network Communications Committee. It's my pleasure to pass things on to Amanda and welcome Amanda to the Life Spark webinar series. And I have to note that she's joining us today from California. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks, Sylvia. I'm very excited to be here, and yeah, it's early for me. I'm in San Francisco right now, actually. Fun enough, I'm here for the Boxnet technology conference. So last night I got to meet lots of fun people, including folks from Google and Salesforce and some of the other apps I'm going to talk to you about today. So it's all very timely and super exciting. So let's just jump right in. I'm going to talk to you today about cloud computing and specifically talk to you about how excited I am about using cloud and web-based tools to further your mission and to just help with projects, nonprofits, or even just a passion that you have. And so before we get started with that, I'm going to start off with this story. And I think we've all been here before. So let me set the stage. You've been working all night on a PowerPoint presentation. Let's say you've worked until almost midnight. You've worked on many hours and versions of the file. You're finally done. You hit submit, you send it, and you go home. Then you're back to work the next morning, and you find out from your colleague that, in fact, you were working off the wrong version of the file. And presentation is in 5 minutes, and you have to go, and you're going to have to go with the old version, and all of your changes are no longer valid. And this all could have been avoided if you had been collaborating on a document in the cloud, but unfortunately you were working off a file that hadn't been updated, and you're stuck. And I know we've all been there. I have certainly been there before several times, and so while this presentation is not solely focused on solving the multiple versions file issue, it is to tell you that there are technology frustrations, but I do believe that technology can be a source of creativity instead of frustration for your organization, your mission, or your project. And so with that story, we're going to kick things off with a poll, and the poll is just to get an idea of how you're using technology now, a bit if you're working in nonprofit or community organizations, and maybe how tech-savvy you consider yourself to be. And that's really just to give us a bit of an idea on who's in the crowd today. All right, let's get started with talking about tech. The mission today that I want you to get across by the end of this session is just to know that there definitely is a better way. Not only that, but using technology, web-based tools that are scalable, low cost, and easy to use, that we can then share more with each other. We can work better as nonprofit organizations, and by doing so, solve more problems creatively. So a bit of context around who I am and the program that I work on, just not for shameless self-promotion, but instead to give you some context around how it is that we're using the tools. So I work in a program called the Time Raiser. The Time Raiser is a silent art auction with a twist. The idea is that the night of the Time Raiser, attendees come to the event and they view the art that's on display. But the art that's up for auction, they can bid volunteer time instead of money on the works of art. We pay local artists for their work thanks to corporate sponsors, and there's up to 30 different nonprofit organizations who are in the room the night of the Time Raiser to inspire people to start their pledge and kickstart a lifetime of volunteerism. So overall, we've invested over $495,000 in the careers of Canadian artists. We've raised over 93,000 volunteer hours and engaged with about 400 nonprofit agencies in 8 Canadian cities. So it is that we pull all of this together. There's only 4 of us full-time, but we have a network of about 250 volunteers, lots of stakeholders across our 8 Canadian cities, and a ton of moving parts. So with this program, we've got the agencies that we're working with, our artists, our art winners, once they've decided to complete a pledge with us. And we really decided when we were working, our team has to work from anywhere. Right now I'm in California. My colleagues are in Toronto, but they were just recently in Vancouver. We made a decision to invest in low-cost, highly scalable, and integrated web tools. And I'll talk a lot about that integration because for us it is so important. So today I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of how it is that we pull together this Time Raiser program using these low-cost, highly scalable tools. I'm going to run you through our core environment, and it's really the tools that we're using to do the majority of our work. and that is Google Apps, EchoSign, which is an e-signing solution, Salesforce.com for our donor management, as well as our accounts and our contact management. We use, of course, for conference calling, but also for screen sharing, which is one of the key points that I'd love to share with you today. Boxnet, which is the conference I'm at right now, and Smartsheet. And our approach to technology, more than anything else, and I'm going to show you some examples right now that follow, is this idea of sharing by default. So it's not just so much about using the technology tools for your organization, but also how can we use those tools to share with others. So here's our technology strategy, and this is something that our organization lives and breathes by. It's not something that relies on just one person in the organization, but something that's important and a value that everybody lives, and that is to create information once, so not multiple versions of a file, distribute it widely, and being able to access it anywhere or access it in multiple places. And this is really the foundation for all of our tool selection. So as tools change and evolve, the core value to create information once, distribute widely, and access it anywhere remains the same. Here's a little example of why it is that we love the cloud and we love these tools, and I'm going to walk you through. And here's a little story. So we have a volunteer that has an idea for a new photo gallery for the TimeRaiser website. They approach us with some offers to help. And so we've often been there before where we want to engage with volunteers and use their skills, but how do we best do that? What we do now is we direct our volunteers and our staff to our website. And so we have our IT and marketing portals, also framework.org, which I'll mention throughout the presentation. We can get access to most of our technology strategies, our marketing strategies, and all of the important documents like budgets and overall missions and visions that they need for our organization. The volunteer then has all the information they need to go and produce the gallery for their social network. They can do a style guide if they want. They can access our logos. And they have everything they need to do the project with very little management from us, which really means that they can produce the video gallery and help us out without us having to invest a lot of time in training and getting them up to speed on our organization. Really, that then provides so much value for the staff member, the volunteer who's gained new skills, and Framework who's gained the updated photo gallery, and of course the great work of the volunteer. An example that I really, really love, and that is using web tools to better engage with your community. And so here's an example of seeking feedback on grants before it's even been submitted. So what you're looking at here is the Toronto Community Foundation Vital People application that went up actually in September. And what you got here is an embedded Google Doc that embeds the actual Word document draft application for me. So the grant was written as a proposal for about a $5,000 grant to fund me doing more awesome tech presentations like this. But what's exciting about this is that we put the grant application up in grant form, in draft form, and then we sought feedback from the community. So we sent an email to some of our well-respected colleagues, and we asked them to review it and leave comments publicly on our website. So you'll see here that they commented on things right down to, catching some typos, adding areas of improvement right away. And so immediately we're using technology to garner community support for our grant applications. We're also publicly showing that we're applying for this application prior to it being submitted to the Toronto Community Foundation. If we're not successful, we'll share that information. If we are successful, we'll share that too. Once the project is completed, we'll then report back on everything that happened with the grant on the same page. So it's a full life cycle available live in real time on our website with community support backing it publicly. Really exciting and a bit of shaking the foundation on traditional grant writing, and it gets me super excited. Sharing is the new normal. And when I talk about that, what you're looking at here is a Smartsheet embedded tool. That is just it's an Excel Lite or Google Spreadsheet Lite document, but it has a couple other features like attachments and comments that you can add to a row. Where it gets really powerful is in the sharing capabilities. And what you'll see here, what you're looking at is Framework's pipeline for 2011 and eventually for 2012. And so, yes, we really are sharing all of our asks, our successful grants, our unsuccessful grants, and the ones that are currently in development. We're even going so far as to describe the total amount of the ask if it's a multi-year proposal. So you can see here that 75% of frameworks funding is short-term project-based funding, which is problematic as we try to scale the program and develop the time raiser through more Canadian cities. You'll see here whether it's a financial contribution or in kind, and which staff member is responsible for that specific grant, which is super important because what we're trying to do here is to explain to the world and do a bit of storytelling around that it's not just our 4 team members who are working on grants for us, it's also our key volunteers and our board members. And that's just, again, to explain that it's not just working, but that we're engaging with all of these volunteers and trying to do the best storytelling and transparency as possible to hopefully further the mission of Framework. There is the idea of throwing out your strategic plan. So gone are the long business strategies or lengthy documents with a one-page executive summary at the beginning, but instead we have a red, yellow, and green business plan reporting. So then this is a web tool called Smartsheet embedded right on framework.org's website. And what we do as a team now is we've moved to red, yellow, and green reporting system for all of our time raiser programs. So you'll see here Toronto, Ontario, Calgary, Vancouver in the green. At times they were yellow. For some of our other programs, they might also be red. We're also reporting on things like our financial management, our human resources strategy, our core programs like platformation. And really what we're doing is saying we get some things right, and we think we're getting a lot right, but there's some cases where we need to improve. And so we'll put a red there and add a comment where that's appropriate. This is the same reporting document that our board of directors has access to. We also have varying levels of permissions. So our board of directors has the ability to log into this tool and see any comments or attachments that are relevant to that row. But the public can just see an overall view of our reporting strategy. And so we have different levels of reporting. And part of the reason for keeping the information specifically for the board is where there's confidential information or where it's just more information than the general public needs, because we're trying to be very conscious of is information overflow with a lot of these things. But what we've really found overall is that this scorecard alleviates so much stress for us in reporting. We can now describe the places where we're looking to invest heavily and grow and where we think we're doing a really great job. Goals when selecting the tools are 3 key points. One is integration. So as we talk about tools like the scorecard or Boxnet where you embedded that grant file, how do these tools talk to one another? If I update a document in Google Apps, will that information be reflected in Salesforce? How does my data move between Box.net, Smartsheet, and EchoSign? And for us, it's important that each tool talk to one another and that data can flow freely between them. It's also important that data can be taken out of the tools. So what we're really talking about here is removing silos where information is locked into one tool and can't get out from that tool. Part of that value for us, again, is openness. So as you've seen in some of the examples that I've shown you, it's super important for us to describe publicly what it is that we're doing and use the tools to tell that story about where Framework is succeeding and some of our challenges, and also to be social. So a great example of that grant is the discuss feed that was added to the bottom of that grant page, where we invite comments from our colleagues and just from the general public who would like to add some information about that grant. And in other cases, there's also a comment discuss feed on our scorecard, on our budget, and on our pipeline. So if you have any comments at all about any of the tools that we're sharing, we would invite you to share that on our website. So I'm going through the tools in the order of our 3 themes: to create information once, distribute it widely, and access it anywhere. So starting with the idea of avoiding that multiple versions of a file problem and creating information one time with Google Apps. Google Apps is so great for sharing collaboratively with others and being able to bring multiple people who are in any location to work on the same version of a file. So we're no longer sending documents by email. We're certainly not worrying about software updates. We're not worrying about licenses, and we're certainly not worried about Mac versus PC because Google Apps runs in the browser, and we can avoid all of those challenges. It allows us to share information instantly, and as you've seen with our some of our documents where we embedded Smartsheets, we're also embedding Google Docs Our budget is a good example of a Google Doc that's embedded on frameworkorg.org site, and that's easily done through Google Ops embed code. It goes to collaborate in real time, and then can I stress it enough? I've said it a few times, but no more email attachments. It's an example of a real-time budget that we've worked on for London, Ontario. And the story goes like this. United Way in London is one of our key partners, and they called me up to have some questions about our art purchases and some of our event costs for the upcoming London Time Raiser. This would be an example of to go back, think about the questions, review the budget, draft a reply, send back, maybe attach the budget document. They would make changes on their side, send some questions back, and we would go back and forth a few times. Instead, while I was on the phone with United Way in London, I sent them a link to this Google Doc. We pulled it up in real time. We made the changes as we discussed them. I also brought my colleague Teresa, who used to work at the Tizer program, jumped in on the budget. She can make changes and chat right within the document, and we're good. So the pros and cons of Google Docs, where standard edition is free. The premium cost at last check was $50 a user a year, but I would certainly look into those costs because they seem to be changing and shifting as we go. But the standard edition of Google Apps, which includes documents, spreadsheets, calendars, Gmail, the standard edition is free. Of course, you need an internet connection, so if we had to talk about a con, it would be that. But of course, we're talking about cloud, so all of these tools are connected to the internet. Smartsheet. How I love Smartsheet. I love Smartsheet as a project management tool. I love it for the dynamic capabilities of having a forward-facing document and then also a back end where you can invite board members and staff to add some more detailed materials and internally collaborate. Really, for us, lives this value of one version of the truth. So what you're looking at here is a budget document. You can see here we've highlighted our expenses for Regina, and it really allows us to just collaborate and work with multiple partners on one version of a tool. Here's an example of how we were using a Smartsheet to collaborate with United Toronto on their Enbridge CN Tower stair climb. So we went, our staff set up a tent where we were talking about our civic footprint program. So before we did that, we put up all of the items that we knew were involved in the event planning, our logistics, the volunteers, our on-site goals, some of our costs. This is a document our staff internally worked on, but we also shared this with United Way Toronto. So again, one version of the truth. You can see things here like you can check box to see who's responsible for the task. You could add roles and responsibilities. And to the left of the document, you can see the attachments and the comments icon. So this is the internal view of Smartsheet. Development using Salesforce.com. Salesforce.com is a great tool, and I'm happy to say with Salesforce.com that there are free licenses up to 10 users for nonprofits, so you can apply to the Salesforce Foundation to get some free licenses, and then after 10 users or 10 seats, it's deeply discounted, so it certainly is a viable option for nonprofits. We use Salesforce for donor development. So we're managing all of these partners. As I described, we have 75% of our funding is project-based. It's short-term. We're dealing with lots of local sponsors in each one of the cities as well as national sponsorships across Canada. Salesforce allows us to get a 360 view of how each one of our staff members is interacting with our partners. We can track the key stages of our resource development. And, of course, it's mobile, so we can track all of that information while we're on the road, which is so key for us. So a snapshot of an example donation page for an organization called Cloud Collaboration. So you can see here things like the stage that the proposal was submitted, who it was last modified by. If you have any key contacts, we track that here. You can also track all email activity sent. So if there was an email sent to a core partner inviting them to, say, the Edmonton Time Raiser, you would see that in this donation page. So all staff members can see all the last conversations that have happened with our key donors, and also if this is a recurring donation or if this is a new donation. It really is a robust platform, and it's deeply customizable. as you look across the top of the page, you'll see things like our community activities, our artworks, and our campaigns, which are specific to TimeRaiser, but they're absolutely customizable to your organization or your project. Just a quick little snapshot of where I start talking about that integration. So you'll see within within Salesforce, we have a link to our key Google Docs. So as we create things like the press release, our floor plan, some of our contracts with our key partners, that information is all stored in the same activity record for a project. So we're really talking here about really awesome integration. EchoSign. EchoSign is a tool that really has saved us so much time. So if I can set the scene, as I talked to our artists, we have up to 30 different artists in each one of the 8 Canadian cities that we're in. Each one of our artists needs to sign a contract. So if you imagine the night of the TimeRaiser, we are interacting with all of these artists and trying to get them to, or our art winners the night of the TimeRaiser, our artists leading up to the TimeRaiser, trying to get them to sign contracts. If they don't sign it the night of the TimeRaiser, we then email it to them. They would print it out, sign it, scan it back to us. We would print it out, put it in a binder. It would take hours and hours of work. We replace all of that with a solution called EchoSign that allows us to send an electronic copy of the contract, which they electronically sign with their signature. They can also add their web identity, so they can sign in with things like their Facebook account, their LinkedIn account. They can sign and authenticate with their email address. It's an eco-friendly option, and it's absolutely saved us 300 hours a year. I would argue it's even saved us more than that, because now we've moved to any of our contracts with our board members, our funders, our staff contracts are all signed from EchoSign. A signed contract, one contract is signed, sends a copy to both parties, and stores a copy of that contract in Salesforce, which is so great for record keeping. So here's a great little screenshot of getting the document signed. Of course, look at that integration. Once again, you can select a document directly from Google Docs, so we're not downloading a file and then re-uploading it to EchoSign. It's one click. Grab a copy of the contract. I can select if I need to sign the contract, if they need to sign it. You can password protect it if you'd like. Each in their inbox receives a branded little email invitation. This is the enterprise white label version of EchoSign. And this is what the signature box looks like. And you'll see here you can provide your web identity, and you can also draw your signature, or you can write it with the little electronic signature feature, which I think is pretty cool. An example of what the signed contract looks like. So you have lots and lots of security procedures that go along with a signed contract. You see the transaction number. You can see the date that it was signed with the name and the email address, the signature, and you can also track the document history, which I love because I can see when somebody has opened and viewed a contract but not yet signed it. So then I can send them an email that says, hey, did you have any questions about that contract? Is there anything I can help you with? Usually that prompts them to sign it and hurries along the process. The staff team at TimeRaiser has at times had a bit of a contest or a bit of joking around about who can get a contract signed fast enough. There's some reporting in Salesforce that can see how quickly contracts get signed, up to, I think the record is 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds, but that's probably sending them between each other. Really, really great for contract management.
Okay.
Distribute it widely. So this is really talking about now we've created all of our key important documents within our organization. There's one version of the truth. Now we need to share that widely with others. So here's just a really quick strategy of how we're using social media, and we like to write out our strategy on it.timraiser.ca. Here's an example of where we really see a key platform in Facebook. We share that information, and we talk a lot about how does information move between Facebook to LinkedIn to Twitter and to YouTube. We're also then using email campaigns. We use Hootsuite for our Twitter needs. We're using MailChimp for our email campaign, and bit.ly to track our links. So really the point of this document is just to think, now that we have all of this information created, how does that get distributed widely to our networks? And trying to be very transparent about how that strategy is communicated with others. So we make sure that this information is widely available to our funders, our stakeholders, and back to that example of volunteers who want to get involved. When we get emails from volunteers who are interested in helping us with our social media campaign, they can really quickly at a glance see exactly how we're managing content. And of course, if one tool changes, we have Google Plus now that not yet for brands and nonprofits, but for personal use, it's certainly coming up quickly. As that starts to be something that nonprofits could potentially use, it will absolutely fit into this strategy. So we can pull pieces out and add new pieces in as they move. And as I mentioned, our strategies are on it.timeraiser.ca. So here's an example of our tool catalog. So as we select all of these awesome tools, we try to be very transparent about the tools that we're using and why it is that we selected it. So in this example, you're seeing our QR codes. They're those funny black and white little images that when scanned give you a lot more information. They can direct you to a website, a calendar, a contact, your mobile phone. And so these QR codes are really a really great tool for cutting down on paperwork at events. We've used them now to give people information about the nonprofit organizations who attend the Time Raiser. If you visit it.timeraiser.ca and click on the QR code, you can see the tool that we've selected, in this case called ScanLife, and also an example of some of the other tools that we researched and why it was that we selected ScanLife.
I just wanted to share with everyone that I think there's a couple of more tools to go, and then we'll be opening up the Q&A sessions. So I've invited everyone, if you have any questions, to please start sending them through the Q&A box on your screens. And thank you so much, Ananda, for sharing all of these tools with us. And feel free as well to go to the poll at the poll results at any moment, since they are in, and I find them quite interesting. If you've had a chance to look at them, I think you'll see that most people here are pretty familiar with one of the tools that you're going to be talking about in a couple minutes. So
yes, so 33% are using Skype, which I love. Glad to hear that. Super exciting to see from this poll that actually nobody in the audience is familiar with or have used Smartsheet, Salesforce, or EchoSign, or Box.net, which is super exciting because now you have all of these fun tools to go and try out after this webinar today. So I'm super excited to see those poll results, and thanks for sharing that. So let's move on to accessing it anywhere. Now let me just say as a caveat that, of course, all of these tools are cloud-based, so they can all be accessed anywhere. But really, for the purpose of dividing up these tools, I wanted to make sure that I talk specifically about some of the great ability to access your documents from anywhere, including San Francisco. Boxnet. What can I say about Box.net? I can say a lot, especially since I just spent all day yesterday with Boxers, and they are certainly a friendly bunch. So setting the stage with the old way, managing assets, specifically managing logos, images, movies, Photoshop files, Adobe Premiere or InDesign files, having to send large files across email. Everybody, I'm sure if you've ever had to send a file that's larger than 5 or 10 megabytes and it's bounced back from an email, you feel my pain. The old way. The old way of transferring files through FTP can be frustrating. You have to create a username and password. You have to tell the person on the other end how to use the FTP, how to access it. It can be a huge headache, and I'm sure many of us have felt in the past. The new way is to store files on Box.net, but Box.net is really more than just a file sharing system. It's an enterprise collaboration tool. From Box.net, you can invite you directly download you. So you create a web link and you can invite them to download the file directly or to view the file in a web browser, leave comments. They can collaborate on a document. People can upload directly to Box.net, which is amazing. You can create a folder or an embed widget on your website, which is really great when you start thinking about creating an application. So if you have a video submission contest or if you're hiring, you can invite people. You can create an embed widget on your website and have people directly upload their resumes and cover letters into the folder called Resource Development New Hires right on Box.net. So you're not inviting people to email your resume and cover letter to your email inbox, and then you're forwarding that and downloading it and printing multiple versions of it. Just send it directly into the Box.net folder, and it's there for any staff members who need access to it. So here's a snapshot of what our branded Box.net platform looks like. So here's a little screenshot of what the share functionality looks like. As I mentioned, you can get a link to the file. You can also embed the file on the website. That's where you saw our granting tool. There was, in that case, it was a Word document that was created by Toronto Community Foundation. I drafted it in Microsoft Word. I uploaded it to Box.net, and then I embedded it on our website. So as I make changes to that grant application as feedback comes in, I save the new version in Box.net, and that change is instantly reflected in real time on our website. So this is not going back to IT and asking for changes to our website, and we're absolutely not worried about static content on our website because it's one version of the truth. I love Box.net for logo management. As we know, if you're working with multiple partners, if you have different projects or programs that you're working with, logos change frequently. What you can do is invite your partner or your stakeholder or your volunteer as a collaborator to the folder, and as their logo changes, they can upload their logo to the file. So you always make sure that everybody has the most up-to-date versions of a logo, and you're not going to print with the wrong version, which has certainly happened to us before at Framework. It's fully integrated with Google Apps and Salesforce. There you can see the theme that's building. Skype. So Skype is the tool that all of you are familiar with, or sorry, a good majority of you are familiar with. But what I want to specifically talk about when we're talking about Skype is screen sharing. So the key challenge for us is when we need to do quick conference calls, but we don't have much of an IT budget at all, really. We have staff or volunteers that need to quickly troubleshoot an issue, or we need to collaborate on a document, or let's say we're working on a website and we just quickly want to get a few people in on the conversation. We use Skype screen sharing often for that. It's also great with our board members for leading meetings, and as a team, we're constantly having team meetings over Skype. It's fast, it's cheap, in some cases free, video conference, and no complicated setup for screen sharing. So it's really, really great to collaborate on a team and work from multiple time zones and multiple cities. And then here's just a really quick example if you're not familiar with how to access screen sharing once you're in a phone call. In this case, I was in a call with Emily, my colleague. It's just a really quick send file or share your screen option, share your full screen, or share a selection of the screen. It's really, really great. To bring this all together, Salesforce.com and Google Apps are really our two core tools that connect to all of these other apps that come and go that we use. Box.net is certainly another one that's a core platform for us. And really, if we put this all together in a bit of an equation, TimeRaiser is a small staff team. We have limited resources and a small IT budget. But together with these tools, it really allows us to be more productive. As you saw with EchoSign, we've saved 300 hours a year at least. It allows us to have new creativity because we are certainly not wasting time getting stuck in IT problems or solving software and licensing issues, and it just allows us to better expand the program. Some final thoughts before I take some questions, and this is just some parting words that I've learned in giving presentations like this for a few months now, and that is to share what you want to share. So maybe you might not be sharing your whole organization's pipeline right now, but there might be pieces of that information that you can share. Use the tools you want to use. I certainly love those 6 tools, and you can see my bias with them, but there are absolutely other tools out there that might be right for your organization. Start small, taking pieces of it to move to cloud, but really thinking about how do I scale my organization, how do I get out of these siloed tools that are costly and challenging for my organization or my project, and how do I move those forward. Remember that in the end, it's not really about the tool at all. It's about how you're collaborating with others and how you're taking that information and sharing it widely. Because I promise you the tool will change. That's it. I'd be happy to take some questions now, and I'll leave my contact information up. I would absolutely invite you to contact me if there's more information I can give you about a tool. Certainly visit it.timeraiser.ca or feel free to send me an email.
Thanks so much, Amanda. You really went through the gamut of so many tools, and that's really wonderful. And I'm wondering if people might still have cold feet about getting into the clouds and maybe are not sure how to get started, and you gave some really great advice. But I'm wondering, do people need any specific training to get started, or is it really intuitive and sort of a learn-as-you-go kind of software?
I certainly think it's a tool. Yeah, absolutely. I certainly think it's a jump in and try it situation, especially because many of these tools, if they're not free, they offer free trials or there's nonprofit discounts available. So certainly an option to try the tool out. Something like Google Apps, if you're not previously familiar with it, the interface is very similar to Microsoft Office, so the same editing capabilities. There are some limitations with some of the templates and complex formatting, but generally we work entirely out of out of Google Apps, and certainly our team didn't really experience too many hours training at all. When we started with Box.net in 2009, our team sat around for about an hour discussing the tool, but it was actually less about training and more about best practices. So we talked a bit about name convention, what are our folder structure going to look like, how do we want to send files to outside external collaborators, and who gets invited to participate in a folder. So it was a lot more about best practices than it was about the tool. I would say in a lot of cases they're very intuitive. We've needed some help. All of these tools are super awesome about having great FAQ on their website, and several of them actually have live web chat features that you can just start a quick little web chat directly with the software providers. So I would certainly say try it, and if you have any questions, we're available. If we're not, the software provider usually is.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Amanda. And you know what? We have a question from Catherine McNaughton, who asks, what are your thoughts about Dropbox? Do you use it? I see similarities with Box.net, but differences also. So what are your thoughts on Dropbox?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So when we are evaluating file sharing tools, we certainly try to look at the other options that are out there. So we absolutely looked at Dropbox. Dropbox is great for their sync features between your files that are stored on the web and syncing it back to multiple devices. But I really think that the collaboration elements of Box.net far exceed that. So being able to share a link to a folder or a file specifically, invite the preview panel to preview documents, the commenting and tagging features and search capabilities that are in Box.net. Also, Box.net offers a whole open API platform for other applications. So EchoSign is an app right within Box.net. There's also a print to PDF app directly in Box.net. So if you have a Microsoft Office or a Google Doc file in Box.net, with one click you can turn it to a PDF, and that's a free open API app. So certainly when we're talking about enterprise collaboration, Box.net for us is really great. And it certainly has a lot more features outside of simply desktop sync. And of course, Box has a sync feature. And actually yesterday at the conference, they just announced Mac sync and cross-platform sync. So you can sync between Mac and PC, which is really, really exciting for Box.net.
Thanks for that, Amanda. And you know what? Cecilia Vargas has a question as well. She'd like to know, how well do these tools run on Linux? I can't pronounce that. Ubuntu specifically.
Yeah. The tools are all web-based, so I would say for many cases, if you're running a standard browser on Linux or Ubuntu, I would say you wouldn't meet too many challenges. That's kind of part of the magic of what these tools is. They run in the cloud. They run in a web browser. I'm not a Linux user myself, although I do have some limited familiarity with it, so I haven't tested out these tools, but considering that they're web-based, if you're running a standard browser, I would imagine you wouldn't have any problems, but I would certainly say check with the FAQ, certainly before signing any agreements.
It seems like for a lot of this, it's really you have to do a little bit of research first before getting on board with any of these tools.
There's a fair bit of research. Really, it's about thinking through your IT strategy as a whole. So how do my current tools going to work with our new tools, and really thinking about data management. So how am I going to move data from maybe an old record-keeping system or an old contact management system into something like Salesforce.com? And so there's a little bit of research to do on the tool itself, but I think more of the work has to do in the strategy around your knowledge management and your content management, and that's really where the work comes in. Luckily, we have a lot of templates on that on it.timeraiser.ca and also on framework.org. So I would certainly encourage you, if you're thinking about ICT planning and your strat planning, to check out some of the examples that we have.
Anastasia Hendry would like to know, would Google Apps and Salesforce be a good place to start? Is she's starting a new nonprofit organization, and she's also wondering what the cost of Salesforce is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly I'm biased because we have found great success with Google Apps and Salesforce.com working together. We certainly like to say that it's not the be-all, end-all, and that there are other options available. So I would certainly, again, considering, what your staff needs are, where you're working from, and try to do a quick evaluation of the options that are out there. There's lots of interesting nonprofits. TechSoup Canada, who we're closely partnered with, Canada Help, also have some very interesting and very helpful resources on building your technology strategy and also accessing software tools. Specifically, TechSoup Canada has a software licensing program that's extremely helpful to establishing a nonprofit. Of course, I would say that I love Google Apps and Salesforce. When we're talking about costs, as I said, there's varying levels of software licenses. So in the case of Salesforce.com, if you apply for a Salesforce Foundation license, if you're granted one, it's free for the first 10 users and then deeply discounted after that. I believe it's 80% discounted, though I don't want to quote that because it could change, and I'd encourage you to contact Salesforce directly. Same thing with Google applications. The standard license is free. I believe it's for the first now. It used to be for the first 50 seats, although I've heard that that's changed, so I don't want to quote that anymore. But to extend past that, if you're getting the enterprise license of Google Apps, certainly look into how many seats you can get for free and then the cost after that. Overall, though, the costs are relatively inexpensive. I would say for our whole platform, our IT budget is less than $5,000 a year. And so we're really not talking about huge IT budgets here. Box.net costs us $1,500 a year for 10 seats. Salesforce Smartsheet, I believe is about $500 to maybe $750 a year. It depends on how many seats we have now. All of that information is available on our website, though, so I probably shouldn't quote numbers that I know for sure.
So that sounds pretty affordable for organizations. What about for groups that are doing collaborative projects or really small nonprofit organizations that might have even a smaller budget, no budget?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any free tools? I know you mentioned that some of them are available on a trial basis for free for 30 days, and after that you're kind of, I guess, stuck trying to find another tool that's free for 30 days.
It depends on the tool. Using your even Google Apps with a free version of Gmail, the personal license has a Google Apps platform where you can invite collaborators in, so you certainly don't need to move to enterprise for Google Apps. You can work within the Google Apps environment completely for free. The enterprise licensing gets you things like the branding and the domain registration, but you could absolutely, if you're working on a project, you can work out of the Gmail platform that isn't necessarily branded but gives you all of the full capabilities of documents, spreadsheets, calendar, Google Sites, even for putting up websites, which is fantastic. Skype, of course, is free. And some of these tools, as you said, yes, there's trial versions in some cases, or there are free options. So there is a freemium model. Box.net is another one that has a free version of the tool. It's just limited in space. So our Box.net enterprise version is a terabyte of data, but a smaller project might not necessarily need a terabyte of data, so you could absolutely use the free model if you were looking at a smaller project.
Thanks, Amanda. And I'm going to pass on to Julie Lasson's question, and she'd like to know, do you still do a bunch of other backups even if you use the cloud?
Interesting question. Currently, we don't have any hardware backups really at all. I will say we do have a terabyte hard drive in our office that we've used to back up our desktop software. So where we have, if there are any files specifically other than desktop, but we really back it all up onto Box.net, so all of our documents are there. We really put our faith and trust into these applications. They are very clear about their uptime guarantees. So we look at Salesforce.com. You can actually look and see, I believe it's trust.salesforce.com, and you can see the applications uptime. There are multiple data centers. It's the same with Google Apps. You know that there's redundant data centers to keep your data up and live. And really, for us, the conversation that our executive director and I have had several times is that, you have to weigh the risks of cloud computing and moving your data to the cloud against the risks of physical security. So if a staff member loses a USB key, what happens then? Or if the office is damaged, if there's a flood, there's a power surge and the hard drive gets fried, those are all risks that you weigh against something like cloud.
That was actually going to be one of my questions about security. How secure is the information in the cloud? And Cecilia, I did get your message and your question. I'll pass that on to Amanda in a second. But we're talking about security.
Yes, security, always a hot topic with cloud. Certainly we feel that our data is very secure. There's lots and lots of information on data security in the cloud. I would certainly say that that's something that you need to have a conversation with your organization or with your project and your level of comfort, but we are certainly absolutely comfortable with security. There are multiple levels of privileges, passwords, secure access for making sure that documents are secure. As with anything else, it's as much about user error, not losing passwords, making sure that staff are accessing the cloud from a secure computer and not from a public center, or a computer doesn't have viruses on it, the same way that you would consider security with desktop applications. I would only say that there's pieces you could share publicly versus, confidential client data that you might not put on a spreadsheet that's embedded on a website, or you might make calls about what information you're collaborating with others in versus what's completely locked down. And so certainly there's absolutely levels of privileges and user account security. You can do things like lock accounts out, reset passwords, all of the standard administration that you would have with a network security system or a database administration system. You have those capabilities within all of the tools.
Okay, well, that is reassuring, actually. And Cecilia would like to know, it's actually a follow-up question to her previous question. Could you repeat the organizations that help new nonprofits devise their IT strategy? She remembers TechSoup, and you also mentioned some others. You want to maybe just...
Yeah, some partners that we've worked with that are certainly building programming around technology. Canada Helps has their My Charity Connects conference every year. They also run webinars focused on technology, and then also some other helping nonprofits collaborate. So they had a really interesting webinar series. TechSoup Canada also has their Net Tuesdays, where they do some technology programming, and those Net Tuesdays are based in Toronto, but I believe that they're if not streamed on internet, the talks are shared online after the program, so you can access TechSoup Canada's Net Tuesdays. And in Canada, we also work very closely with them in their standards initiative, and so they're doing some interesting things around standards and where technology planning inevitably comes into play there. And so those are just, and of course, Social Innovation Generation and Mars, we also work closely with a lot of these conversations around the cloud.
Well, we should put the links to some of these organizations up. So Imagine Canada,
absolutely.
Social Innovation Canada Helps, TechSoup. I think everyone would probably appreciate that.
Absolutely. And all of that information is available on our website. You can actually, there's a blog post on framework.org that talks about our collaboration. Recently we had a meeting where we brought all of those organizations together in our office, so you can read all about that, and links to all of their websites are all on framework.org.
We have a question from Catherine McNaughton. If I recall correctly, you had a slide that said 95% of your data is in the cloud, 5% on Microsoft. I'm wondering what Microsoft tools and why.
Yes, good question. So there's some cases where the TCF grant is a perfect example of that. So that was an application that was written as a as a Microsoft Word doc, and we had to submit it in that form. There's also cases where there might be complex templates that we're creating or stylized formats that we bring into Microsoft Office to do that. Another example of that would be if we're working with a board member, a stakeholder, I've mentioned funders who are working in Microsoft Office. We, of course, don't force everybody to collaborate with us in the cloud. If they're working in Microsoft Office, we acknowledge that, and we, of course, will work with them. But it's not the majority of our work. It's not how we work internally, but absolutely when we're working with partners, if somebody asks us to send content and paste it into an email, while it's not something we do frequently, of course, we're not going to fully ignore them. We absolutely work with our partners and the technology tools that they have.
Makes total sense. And related to the question about being completely in the cloud, did Framework start out in the cloud, or was there a transition process? Or did you?
Absolutely, there's been a transition. We've been using Salesforce for 6 years, probably actually pushing 7 years now. I've been saying 6 years for more than a year. So certainly it's been a transition. There's been times we started with Boxnet in 2009, EchoSign shortly after that. Been using Smartsheet for just over a year. So as new tools come out, we evaluate them, we look at them against our existing game plan, and we make decisions based on those tools. It's absolutely been a transition. We take pieces as we go. Our financial system is still in the desktop. We're still in QuickBooks, but absolutely it's the one remaining piece that we're looking to bring into the cloud. So please don't get me wrong. There's pieces we are still moving and looking to improve, and we're just kind of taking it as we go.
And is that sort of the general advice you'd have for a smaller organization in terms of finding the right match between the organization and the tool? Like to pick, I suppose, the one that you need the most, or the one that you have the most IT issues with the most? And
yeah, absolutely. I would say, it goes back to that question around ripping your hair out at the beginning of the presentation. And, is technology a source of frustration, or is it a source of creativity? And so I would look, we're starting to talk about if collaboration is a key value to you, then looking at a tool that allows multiple users to work on the same file would be a quick, immediate goal. It could donor management and granting systems is something that you are currently static or might be an older system, and you absolutely need to move to the cloud for that. So you might be looking at Salesforce first. It certainly depends on your organization's mission and some of the key values, and goes back to, absolutely, as you said, where are the key frustrations, and try to alleviate those to save you time, right? This is about saving the organization time, making you more efficient, to just give you more time to solve the problems that your organization is working towards, and not lose time in some of these technical frustrations that suck whole days away from us.
Thank you, Mel. You know what? This has been a really interesting conversation. We have about 2 minutes left, and I know some people have to get back to work, get back to lunch, get back to different things. Some people are joining us from BC, others from the East Coast. And I do want to just raise one of the things that I think is really interesting about what you're doing is sort of the logic of sharing everything, the philosophy behind the tools. And I think that provides a lot of there's a lot of things that we can reflect on based on that concept, that you're sort of turning the competitive model on its head. And so I think, aside from learning about new tools out there, I think there's a lot of other kinds of reflections that could stem from using these tools, like organizational questions and more philosophical questions related to that.
Thank you much. Yes, this certainly, our sharing philosophy is the key piece that I would love everyone to take away from. Our value is to share by default. I would certainly encourage everyone to check out some of these things on the website. I'd love to hear your feedback on things like sharing our pipeline and our budget. I would love to hear some thoughts, criticism, ideas, new challenges that you might see with it. We're certainly open and encourage feedback.
And with that, I do want to thank everyone for participating, and remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded, and there will be a link to this presentation and to the question and answer period that will be available online in the next few days, and I'll make sure to send everyone a link by email. And please take a few seconds to fill out the little short survey that appears on your screen when you check out of the webinar. It helps us to improve the webinar experience for future webinar experiences for participants. And just very, very quickly, as a last note, I did mention off the top that this webinar is part of the latest Spark project. And today's webinar actually launched the new Spark Talk webinar series, and I want to share girlsactionfoundation.ca, our website link, with you, and to encourage you to check out the site and to click on Light a Spark to find out different ways to get involved, including participating in more webinars. And Catherine and others wanted to know about the webinars coming up. We're going to have information on our website about that. And you could also honor your own spark or women in your life that you find inspiring. You could link to our Facebook page and encourage or like our Facebook page and encourage other people to like it as well. And I also encourage you to check out some more of our PSAs. I think some of you had fun listening to the one that came up when you first joined the webinar. So thank you again for participating and for great interest that you showed in this topic. And thank you especially to Amanda for joining us today, California.
Thank you very much.